Be strong.
Hi everyone, welcome to another FinPlus video. Today's video I'm going to talk about GDP, what it is, how it works, how it's relevant to you. So as usual, I'd like to start with an example, and this is all the way back in the third grade. So younger me, I was talking to my friend and he was from China, and being an Indian, both of us were having a petty discussion or an argument on whose country is better. Extremely petty argument, yeah. So when we actually think about, which country is better, I mean which country might be better from an economic perspective, from a development perspective, infrastructure perspective, maybe which country is better to live in, which country has better opportunities. Right? There are many factors to consider. So when I got back home, I decided to do my own research, and I came across a few terms. Came across inflation. I came across standards of living. Right? I came across the HDI, which is the Human Development Index. But there was one common thread across every article I read about different countries and how to differentiate between them, and that was GDP. So the full form of GDP, sure you might have heard about it, is called the gross domestic product. But what really is GDP? What is it? How does it work? And moreover, where does your country stand in comparison to others? I had this argument with my friend and I was wondering the same thing. So I came across GDP and did some research into it, and this is what I'm going to explain. So I think, before we get into the specifics of GDP, understand its definition. So it is the final market value of all goods and services produced within an economy over a time period. And this time period could be, quarterly, just 3 months, semi-annually, which is 6 months, of course annually, which is 12 months. Now, there are two key terms here: the final market value, also produced within an economy, right? But what does that mean? So these are actually quite technical, and I'll use an example again, and that of Krishna's suit company based in India. And to explain this, I'm going to use sort of something called a production sequence. Okay, step by step. So that final suit that you get all starts from the farm. Okay, there'll be some farmers maybe farming wool or cotton, and this farmed wool is purchased by your wool refinery. Okay, people who actually make something usable out of that wool or cotton. Okay, and then maybe the wool refinery, maybe they're gonna sell it to wool resellers. Let's take that for now. So these wool resellers will take different forms of wool and sell it to different people who need it: clothes companies, suits companies, etc. So in this case, we're going to take suit manufacturers, because that's our example. And now we finally get to the final step in the production process, which is Krishna's suit company. So they actually buy suits from the suit manufacturer. And finally, they actually sell that suit, that final suit, to people like me, people like you, consumers. So now, this is step 5, is the final market suit, or the final market good, right? It's the final thing that we consume. So if it's the final good, then it's also the final value, which is what we talked about in the definition of GDP. So to better understand this, let's actually assign values to each step. So the wool refinery will pay $5 for the wool from the farmers, the resellers $15 to the refinery, and so on, right? So eventually the suit company pays $60 for the suit. And then we might pay around, $100+. And that $100 is your final market value. Now, the reason we don't take all those previous market values, that $5, $15, $30, $60, right, can actually talk in terms of intermediate steps. So this is your total value, and it's equal to your final value. And the reason we only take our final value is because we're actually overcounting. If you think about it, if we count $5, $15, $30, $60, it's all towards the production of the same good that Krishna Suit Company is eventually selling for $100. That's why we only take the final value. So now when we actually summarize everything that we've talked about today, final value of goods and services is probably the most important thing. And you don't take those intermediate purchasing steps. You only count the final value. Another thing to mention is that this final value of goods and services, or GDP, is measured in the currency of that economy. So the United States will be dollars, India will be rupees. And another thing to mention is that the GDP is basically the output of an economy. Right? There are multiple businesses that actually sell these goods, and multiple people buying them. Now, there's actually one question that we lead to. Does higher GDP really indicate more development, or does that really indicate economic growth? So when I actually refer to previous example, right, the first one that we started off with, is it really relevant to say that India is better than China, maybe, or China is better than India because of higher GDP? It's quite debatable. So now in part 2, so it's part 1, I'm going to talk about what does GDP comprise of, the specific details, what's nominal GDP, and lastly, what is real GDP. Do stay tuned for the next part as well.